The Legend of Jigong, Chapter 17.
Imagine for a second that there's a massive heavy-duty bulldozer idling right outside your front door.
Oh, terrifying.
Right, and the driver has a legal permit from literally the single most powerful politician in the country to just demolish your home.
Wow. Okay. That's a nightmare scenario.
Exactly, and you have absolutely no money, zero legal standing, and the clothes you're wearing are literally falling apart at the seams. What is your very first move?
I mean, the natural human reaction there is just pure physiological panic. The amygdala fires right up.
For sure.
You probably try to scramble for a lawyer, or maybe start packing up whatever you can physically carry, or, if you're feeling particularly defiant, you go stand right in front of the bulldozer.
Yeah, the classic standoff.
Right. It's a binary response. You either fight with everything you have, or you flee.
It's the standard fight-or-flight response, right? Wired into us for survival when we face an overwhelming, unstoppable force. But what if you chose a third option? What if, instead of screaming or crying or running away, you casually strolled up to the driver of that bulldozer and delivered a completely ridiculous, nonsensical stand-up comedy routine?
I mean, that would certainly scramble the dynamic. It completely breaks the expected script of how power and intimidation operate.
Right.
The driver wouldn't even know how to process that reaction.
And that broken script, that disruption of power, is exactly what we're exploring today. Chapter 17.
Such a fascinating text.
Yeah, our source material details a high-stakes clash between this legendary, eccentric, and notoriously ragged monk named Jigong and the agents of Prime Minister Qin.
And Prime Minister Qin happens to be the single most powerful political figure in the land.
Exactly. It is the ultimate David and Goliath setup.
But, this version of David isn't armed with the slingshot.
No, not at all.
He is armed with an incredibly sharp wit, a mastery of big-picture philosophy, and an absolute refusal to play by Goliath's rules.
So let's get right into the text and look at how this confrontation actually begins. We open on what seems like a perfectly tranquil day.
Yeah. Setting the scene.
Yeah. Jigong is casually playing chess at the home of a wealthy friend named Shan.
Just a normal afternoon.
Right, but out of nowhere, the text says Jigong suddenly shivers. He claps his hands 3 times, accessing what the translation calls his spiritual light.
Which is a key detail.
And he's hit with an instant premonition. He realizes that Prime Minister Qin has dispatched a crew of agents to his temple to demolish the Great Stele Pavilion.
And the reason for this is just pure vanity.
Utter vanity. The Prime Minister wants to harvest the raw building materials to construct a heaven-touching pavilion.
Referred to as Ji Tianlu.
Yes, for his own private mansion.
We really need to pause on that architectural detail for a second because it perfectly encapsulates secular arrogance.
How so?
Well, a steel pavilion in a Buddhist temple is a sacred communal monument. It usually houses important stone tablets that record the history or teachings of the community.
So it's heavily significant.
Oh, absolutely. The Prime Minister is perfectly willing to cannibalize the spiritual heart of the community simply to build a monument to his own ego.
Just a breathtaking display of entitlement.
Truly breathtaking.
It really is. And the moment Jigong has this vision, his reaction is instantaneous. He stands up from the chessboard and flat out declares he is going to go fight the Prime Minister.
Which sounds insane to anyone else in the room.
Yeah, his friend, Shan, instantly tries to talk him down. He reminds Jigong of reality, like, hey, the Prime Minister is the highest-ranking official in the empire.
And Jigong is just a poor monk in torn robes.
Right.
Yeah.
It's suicide. But Jigong completely ignores the warning and just walks right out the door.
He is walking along the famous Su Causeway in Hangzhou, and he is singing to himself.
He's singing? And the source text gives us the specific lyrics to this song, and they are incredibly vivid.
What is he singing about?
He sings about the illusion of time, how incredibly short life really is, and how youth flashes into old age in the blink of an eye.
Very existential.
Very. He sings that chasing endless wealth and climbing the political ranks is a hollow pursuit because the only thing it actually guarantees is that you will get white hair earlier from all the stress of trying to maintain it.
It is a profound poetic critique of the bureaucratic rat race.
It goes even further. He sings that the moon isn't always bright. Flowers inevitably fade. And ultimately, it does not matter how rich, how connected, or how politically untouchable you are.
Because everyone meets the same end.
Exactly. Every single person ends up in the exact same place, in a grave covered by green grass year after year.
That's a powerful image.
So What does this all mean? Because my theory here is that this isn't just him being poetic or singing a depressing tune about mortality.
No, it serves a real purpose.
I think he is actively calibrating his own nervous system. It feels like this song is his actual armor.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is absolutely his armor, and it highlights a powerful cognitive tool.
Like what?
In modern psychology, this is very similar to cognitive reappraisal. By singing about the impermanence of the prime minister's wealth, his status, and his impending death, Jigong is intellectually and emotionally stripping away the fear associated with that power.
Wow, okay.
He is actively shrinking the giant.
He's taking away the illusion of permanence.
Exactly. When we feel intimidated by someone in our own lives, maybe it's a CEO, an aggressive landlord, or anyone holding massive systemic power over us, we suffer because we buy into the illusion that their power is absolute and forever.
We think they're invincible.
Right. But Jigong zooms out to the cosmic scale of time. On a timeline of 1,000 years, a prime minister's title is completely meaningless.
It's nothing.
That heaven-touching pavilion he wants to build will inevitably rot and crumble into dust. The green grass grows over the emperor just as it grows over the peasant.
That's beautifully put.
When you truly internalize that impermanence, the person threatening you ceases to be a terrifying, omnipotent force. They just become another temporary, flawed human being making a temporary mistake.
That reframing is incredible. So, heavily armed with his philosophical armor, Jigong arrives back at his temple, and the contrast in attitudes is almost comical.
Because of who is waiting for him?
Yeah, waiting for him is the temple supervisor, a monk named Guangliang, who absolutely does not possess this cosmic perspective.
Not in the slightest. Guangliang is having a very grounded, very panicked secular reaction.
He is having a total meltdown. He runs up to Jigong and declares they are facing a sky-collapsing disaster.
Sky-collapsing disaster. That's quite the phrase.
Right. 4 of the prime minister's stewards are sitting right there in the temple's meditation hall, waiting to direct the demolition.
And Guangliang is terrified.
Completely. He essentially argues for immediate capitulation, saying there is nothing they can do to stop men who carry a mandate from the very top of the government.
And this is the moment where Jigong pivots from grand cosmic philosophy to razor-sharp practical logic.
He has to.
Yeah, he has to snap Guangliang out of his panic.
He does, and he uses this brilliant, airtight, slippery slope argument. He looks at the supervisor and asks, okay, if we step aside and let the prime minister demolish the Great Steel Pavilion today, what happens tomorrow?
What happens when they want more?
Exactly. What happens when the military commander decides he wants to tear down the Mahavira Hall?
We should provide some context on the architecture there, because the progression Jigong describes is highly specific and intentional.
Oh, really? Break that down for me.
Well, the Great Steel Pavilion is an important monument, but it's generally an outer structure. The Mahavira Hall, however, is the main sanctuary.
Ah, okay.
It is the literal heart of a Buddhist temple where the central statues are housed and the primary ceremonies take place.
So he's saying if they take the perimeter today, they'll take the heart tomorrow.
Exactly, and then he pushes it even further.
He does. He asks, what if the local government officials decide they want the east and west wings? Or what if the county magistrates send a letter demanding we dismantle the Sutra Library?
And the Sutra Library is essentially the mind of the temple.
Right, where all the sacred texts and knowledge are kept. Here's where it gets really interesting. Jigong isn't just making a philosophical point about boundaries.
No, it's very personal.
He takes fierce personal ownership of the situation.
Yeah.
He reminds the supervisor that he personally went out and raised the funds for that specific pavilion.
He put his own sweat into it.
Yeah, and he refuses to hand it over. To me, Guangliang's instinct to just surrender reminds me of a company dealing with a ransomware attack.
Oh, that's an interesting connection.
Like, if you pay the hackers today for one encrypted file just to make them go away, you aren't actually buying freedom or safety. You are just funding their next attack on your entire hard drive.
You're proving to them that you are a viable target.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like setting a precedent in contract law. Yield your boundaries once just because someone is intimidating, and eventually you lose the whole property.
This raises an important question for all of us about how we establish boundaries when facing aggressive authority.
Definitely.
Guangliang's instinct is the default instinct for most people. Comply to avoid immediate conflict. Appease the aggressor in the hopes that they will be satisfied and leave you alone.
But that never works.
No, but Jigong logically dismantles that fear-based response. He outlines the historical reality that blind obedience to corrupt power does not purchase peace.
It just invites more trouble.
It only serves as an invitation for further exploitation. Tyranny rarely announces itself by taking everything you own in one fell swoop. It tests the fences.
It takes a pavilion today to see if it can take a sanctuary tomorrow.
Precisely. Jigong understands that the boundary must be fiercely held at the very first infringement, regardless of how intimidating the intruder appears to be.
So let's look at his arsenal at this exact moment. He has the initial motivation from his spiritual clarity.
Right.
He has his philosophical armor that neutralizes his fear of death and power. And he has laid out an airtight, logical argument for why appeasement will destroy their community.
He's fully prepared mentally.
But none of that changes the physical reality waiting for him in the next room.
The actual agents.
Right. How does a single ragged monk actually bypass 4 elite political agents, these stewards, who are physically occupying a 3-sided courtyard waiting to tear his building down?
It's a logistical nightmare.
It is. He doesn't use his spiritual abilities to cast a spell on them. He doesn't pick up a weapon. He uses a deeply absurd stand-up comedy routine.
He weaponizes absurdity, and it is incredibly effective.
It's masterful. So Jigong casually strolls toward the north room, where these agents are drinking tea. Now, the text refers to these agents as the Third Masters.
Yes. Third Master was a colloquial title of respect. It was often used for powerful stewards, fixers, or upper-level servants in the employ of high-ranking officials.
So these aren't just low-level guards.
No, they wielded the prime minister's proxy power, which made them incredibly dangerous in their own right. They were the ones who got their hands dirty.
And they are very aware of their status. Remember, Jigong's defining visual trait is that his clothes are famously ragged, torn, and filthy.
He looks like a beggar.
Yeah, so the second he steps into the courtyard, visual hierarchy takes over. The stewards immediately halt him. They demand to know who this dirty beggar is and what he thinks he's doing interrupting them.
They look at his appearance and instantly assert dominance. They are operating on the rigid social scripts of their era.
But Jigong doesn't challenge their dominance. He instantly plays right into it.
This is where it gets brilliant.
He launches into this elaborate, chaotic, and completely ridiculous lie. He tells them he isn't even a monk from this temple.
What does he say he is?
He claims he's just a guy temporarily watching over a local nun's convent because, and this is his actual excuse, the old nun died and the young nun ran away.
It's a beautifully calculated opening move.
It's so funny.
It's slightly scandalous, it paints a picture of complete incompetence, and it instantly lowers their guard.
They don't see him as a threat anymore.
Exactly. In their minds, he ceases to be a defending monk protecting his sacred ground, and he instantly becomes a chaotic, bumbling clown.
But a clown who might possess something incredibly valuable. Because once he has them listening, Jigong baits the hook with a story perfectly engineered to exploit their specific mission.
He knows what they're there for.
Yeah, he tells these stewards that his temple happens to have massive wooden beams and pillars. He describes them as being so gigantic that if one person crouched on one side of a beam and another person crouched on the exact opposite side, they wouldn't even be able to see each other.
He pivots and speaks directly to their greed. They are there on orders to procure building materials for a massive pavilion.
And he's offering it to them.
Suddenly, this ragged buffoon is offering them the ultimate building materials.
The stewards are utterly captivated. They think they've just stumbled onto the greatest architectural gold mine in the province.
They're completely hooked.
And right when they're leaning in, Jigong delivers the punchline. He says, oh yes, the wood is so astoundingly massive that even the rafters are so big, you can't see the person crouching on the other side.
And that's the trap.
Now, the stewards immediately burst out laughing at the sheer absurdity of this statement.
Because a rafter, by its very architectural definition, is a relatively slender piece of wood used to support a roof.
Right.
A giant, massive rafter is a complete oxymoron. It's structural nonsense.
And they know it's nonsense, which is why they are laughing. And while the tension is completely broken, they jokingly ask him, okay, what do you intend to do with all this giant wood? Are you trying to sell it? Are you offering it as a gift to the prime minister?
And what's his response?
Jigong, playing the fool to absolute perfection, casually replies that he doesn't want to sell it at all. He just wants a few copper coins so he can finally buy a new pair of pants.
It is the absolute perfect cherry on top of the absurdity.
I mean, he literally just told a nonsensical joke about the size of his wood to high-ranking officials to get past security. My theory on why this works so flawlessly is that it exposes the cognitive blindness of the stewards.
How do you mean?
Did the head steward, a man named Kinan, who was listening from inside the room, actually believe this guy had magical, giant timber?
Of course not.
But their logical faculties completely shut down because of confirmation bias. Their bias tells them that this ragged monk is inherently stupid and beneath them.
They underestimate him.
Yeah, they are so blinded by their own greed and their assumption of his idiocy that they don't process it as a trick. They just think they're taking advantage of a moron.
That is a perfect read on the psychology of the scene. Steward Kenan didn't believe the physics of a giant rafter, but he wholly believed he had found a highly useful, desperate fool.
Right.
When Kenan hears this exchange, his greed overrides his security protocol. He thinks, here's a pathetic, slightly unhinged monk who is willing to part with incredibly valuable resources for the price of some cheap trousers.
It's too good a deal to pass up.
Exactly. He invites Jigong inside the room, specifically warning him to behave and not be, and the translation of this phrase is just wonderful, monkey-headed and dog-brained.
Monkey-headed and dog-brained.
Yes, which basically means mischievous or tricky.
That insult perfectly reveals how little of a threat they consider him to be.
Exactly. Jigong successfully bypasses an elite security detail without matching their physical force, without raising his voice, and without casting a single spell.
He just walked right in.
He does it by actively making himself appear incredibly pathetic, yet potentially useful. He completely subverts their expectations of what resistance looks like.
They were ready for a fight, not a joke.
These stewards were likely prepared for weeping monks or angry villagers or legal threats. They knew exactly how to crush that kind of resistance.
Right.
They were entirely unprepared for a stand-up routine about giant rafters and ripped pants. Humor completely disrupts the power dynamic because you fundamentally cannot be intimidated by someone you are laughing at.
That's so true.
And you very rarely fear someone who goes out of their way to make you laugh.
It is an intellectual Trojan horse.
Yeah.
He essentially joked his way past the guards and got himself right inside the room where the decisions are made.
A brilliant tactical maneuver.
Okay, let's shift scenes. How this legendary crazy monk, Jigong, systematically dismantles the illusion of untouchable state power.
It's such a brilliant text.
It really is. We're going to look at how his use of linguistic traps, weaponized absurdity, and this wild magical realism just exposes the sheer fragility of corrupt authority and, the blind obedience of the people who serve it.
And I think it's crucial to understand from the outset that the foolishness or, the humor in this source material isn't just meant to be funny. It is a deliberate, highly subversive political tool. Jigong is operating in a world where, direct confrontation with the state literally means death. So he uses absurdity to kind of short-circuit the entire system of hierarchy.
Well, let's look at how that short-circuiting actually begins.
Yeah.
And the contrast established here by the author is just stark.
Oh, absolutely.
You have these four head servants, Qinan, Qinshun, Qinji, and Qinming. And they march into the temple to demolish the Great Steel Pavilion.
Right, because they want to take its massive ancient timber for Prime Minister Qin's private heavenly pavilion garden.
Exactly. And they're intercepted by Jigong, who just appears to them as nothing more than a ragged, very poor monk.
And naturally, they immediately dismiss him. They are entirely secure in the borrowed power of a prime minister.
Right.
So they announce they are operating under the orders of their Darren, Your Excellency. By invoking that word, they basically expect the monks to simply collapse, bow down, and hand over the lumber without a second thought.
But Jigong refuses to play his assigned role in that dynamic. Instead, he sets this brilliant linguistic trap by taking the literal translation of Darren and just throwing it right back in their faces.
It's so good.
He looks at these arrogant men and essentially asks, wait, you're following the orders of the adult in your house. Do you not have any adults in your own homes?
Yeah, he just totally undercuts them.
It's amazing. It strikes me that these men have no actual power of their own. They are operating entirely on a borrowed authority, which makes their egos incredibly fragile.
Oh, completely.
I'd call it something like the dictator's middleman dilemma. Like they have to project absolute dominance because the second they don't, they are nothing. So Jigong literally pities them for lacking any sense of autonomy.
The dictator's middleman dilemma is actually the perfect framework for this because Jigong is actively stripping away their intimidating facade. By playing on the word Darren, He refuses to acknowledge the political weight of the title. He reduces their grand, state-sanctioned mission to a petty, juvenile errand being run by overgrown children.
Whoa, right.
He denies them the very fear that their entire identity relies upon.
And then he pushes it even further, right?
Yeah.
He sends them back with a message for the prime minister himself. Jigong points out the sheer hypocrisy of the prime minister's position.
Yeah, he really calls him out.
He notes that the prime minister holds the title of the Three Dukes and is the man tasked with balancing the yin and yang. And I want to pause on that because those aren't just fancy bureaucratic titles, right? They carry immense philosophical weight.
They really do.
Jigong is basically saying that a man with the cosmic responsibility of maintaining the harmony of the universe should be doing good deeds, not tearing down Buddhist grounds for a landscaping project. And then he gives the servants a direct command. He says, tell him I said no.
And the historical and philosophical context of those titles is exactly why Jigong's humor cuts so incredibly deep here. Well, the Three Dukes were the highest-ranking officials in the ancient imperial system. Their duty to balance the yin and yang meant they were fundamentally responsible for the moral and natural order of the state.
Okay.
So if there was like a flood or a famine, it was often seen as a failure of these officials to maintain cosmic balance.
Oh, wow. That is a lot of pressure.
Exactly. So for Jigong to juxtapose this vast, universe-sustaining mandate against the petty theft of lumber for a private garden, it exposes a rot at the very core of the government.
Right.
The prime minister is claiming divine authority while literally acting like a common thief.
But, failing to outsmart a beggar creates a new, very immediate problem for these servants. Because when unquestioned authority is made to look foolish and it lacks any logical or moral defense, the only tool it has left to save face is physical violence.
Yeah, that is the inevitable default of authoritarian middle management.
Right. So Tinan, the head servant, is just infuriated by being called ignorant. He snaps and he winds up to slap Jigong across the face.
When the script breaks down, violence is the only way they know how to reassert control.
But Jigong effortlessly dodges the slap. He acts almost like a matador, kind of luring Qinan outside the temple. And Qinan is completely blinded by rage at this point, so he orders his entire entourage, the Third Masters, to beat the monk.
A total overreaction.
Completely. They swarm the area and absolutely dogpile the figure on the ground, just punching and kicking relentlessly. But here is the mechanism of that violence that fascinates me.
Yeah.
The victim on the ground is screaming, "Don't hit, it's me." Yet the mob completely ignores the pleas. They just shout back that the victim deserves it for daring to challenge the authority of the prime minister.
This is such a profound commentary on the speed of compliance within an authoritarian structure.
What do you mean?
Well, the system values immediate violent obedience far more than accuracy or truth or even basic situational awareness. The servants don't stop to verify who they are hitting. They only care that an order was given to hit someone. And they are terrified of being seen as, insufficiently brutal by their peers.
It reminds me of algorithmic outrage on social media, or an internet pile-on.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Because the momentum of the mob is so fast and blind that the participants aren't even really looking at who they're canceling or attacking.
Well,
They just know they've been given permission by their social group to be furious.
Exactly.
And whoever happens to be in the center of the circle gets destroyed, even if it turns out to be one of their own allies. Because that is exactly what happens here.
Yeah, it's a huge twist.
Xinshen, another servant, finally pauses because the voice screaming from the bottom of the dog pile sounds really familiar. So they stop, they look up, and they realize Jigong is just standing off to the east, laughing at them.
Yes.
The man they just brutally beat to a pulp is their own leader, Jinan.
Which answers the question of whether Jigong used a complex illusion to swap places, or if this was purely the result of blind mob chaos.
Right, was it magic or just madness?
In the literary tradition of Jigong, his magic frequently functions as a mirror. He doesn't necessarily need to cast some sophisticated spell. He simply sidesteps the aggression and lets their own blind, violent momentum do all the work for him.
Wow.
They beat Qinan because they expected to be beating an enemy, and in their frenzy, they projected the identity of the enemy onto the nearest available body.
But the humiliation of beating up their own boss doesn't cause them to reflect or retreat, which is crazy to me. Instead, they just double down.
Of course they do.
They declare that Jigong is using dark magic and prepare to escalate the fight with their remaining forces. And this escalation forces Jigong to deploy a vastly more intense psychological counterattack.
This is where the text gets really interesting.
Yeah. He remarks, people are bullied if they are kind, horses are ridden if they are gentle, and then he chants a 6-syllable true mantra. He says, Om Mani Padme Hum Om Shilling Siya.
And the inclusion of that specific mantra is central to understanding the source text's deeper philosophy.
How is
Well, Om Mani Padme Hum is arguably the most famous mantra in Buddhism, and it's deeply associated with the bodhisattva of compassion. Its traditional purpose is actually the purification of negative emotions.
right, like transforming pride and jealousy into wisdom,
Exactly. Transforming aggression into compassion.
which makes the immediate result of the chant so shocking in the story. Because the servants feel a sudden chill, and instead of finding inner peace, they are overcome with an intense, irrational, blinding anger.
Right.
But they don't attack Jigong, they turn on each other. 18 men pair off into 9 brutal one-on-one fights. So, how does a mantra of compassion trigger a violent mutiny?
Because true compassion and purification require radical honesty. By chanting a purification mantra, Jigong strips away their polite societal filters.
Oh, I see.
He removes the rigid decorum of the prime minister's court and the superficial hierarchy that keeps them all in line. And without those artificial constraints, the only thing actually left inside these men is the toxic, cutthroat ambition required to survive under a corrupt official. The purification doesn't implant the violence. It merely removes the fake loyalty, masking the violence they already harbor.
I mean, if you've ever worked in a highly toxic corporate environment, you recognize this dynamic instantly, right?
Oh, for sure.
The moment the boss leaves the room or the threat of the HR department is removed, the middle managers just tear each other apart for the scraps. Jigong's magic isn't creating the violence, it's just removing the institutional leash.
Exactly.
And we see this in the specific matchups, the text details.
It reveals a deeply broken household. I mean, they present themselves to the outside world as this unified, untouchable force of state authority. But internally, they harbor intense jealousy, resentment, and a desire to dominate one another.
Yeah.
The magic essentially forces them to swallow their own poison.
And it is highly potent poison.
Yeah.
The fight becomes incredibly grotesque. The text tells us that one servant literally bites off another's ear.
It gets really intense.
And then the victim, bleeding profusely, retaliates by biting off the attacker's nose.
Oh.
I mean, I'm looking at this violence in the text, and I have to admit, it challenges my perception of the hero monk archetype.
Oh, absolutely.
Biting off noses and ears is visceral, it's permanent, and it's brutal.
Mm.
It feels almost unhinged for a holy figure to facilitate this.
It is undeniably dark. But within this tradition, a figure like Jigong operates completely outside the bounds of conventional, polite morality. His function is to expose the absolute truth of a situation, no matter how ugly or uncomfortable that truth is. The violence they inflict on each other is actually the literal manifestation of the psychological violence they inflict on the populace every day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, while enforcing the prime minister's will. The text uses physical mutilation to represent the moral mutilation required to serve in that kind of administration.
That makes a lot of sense. They are chewing each other to pieces because that is the culture of the institution they serve.
Precisely.
But this mutiny of resentment reaches a chaotic peak that actually threatens the safety of Linjin Temple itself. The local authority figures within the temple can no longer ignore the political disaster unfolding on their grounds.
Right. The temple supervisor intervenes, and his reaction highlights another layer of how fear operates in this society.
Yeah, he comes running out, and he is absolutely terrified. But he isn't terrified of the supernatural display or the blood.
Oh, not at all.
He is terrified of the political consequences of mangling the prime minister's men on temple property. So he begs Jigong, referring to him respectfully as Daioji, to stop the spell. And interestingly, Jigong complies without any argument at all. He simply ends the magic.
And the immediate aftermath of the spell breaking is one of the most pathetic, revealing scenes in the entire narrative.
It really is. The men just snap out of their trance. They are completely confused, literally spitting out each other's noses and ears.
Yeah.
And what is their very first instinct? They don't apologize. They don't express horror at their own actions. They immediately pivot to self-preservation and blame Kinan for starting the mess.
They refuse to take an ounce of personal accountability.
Right.
The moment the hierarchy is reestablished in their minds, they instantly revert to the blame game, pushing all responsibility upward onto the man who led the expedition.
So Kinan is battered, bruised, and thoroughly humiliated. He demands the temple hold the crazy monk while he rides back to the prime minister's mansion to report. But on the way back, a colleague advises him not to tell the prime minister the truth about what happened. And Qinan takes that advice. He lies directly to Prime Minister Qin.
This is such a key moment.
He claims that all the monks at the temple happily agreed to give up the timber, but that one rogue, crazy monk assaulted them, completely unprovoked.
This cover-up is really a pivotal moment in the text. The decision to lie fundamentally alters the trajectory of the entire conflict.
I mean, I'm looking at Qinan's decision to lie here, and it makes perfect, terrifying sense.
How so?
If he admits the truth, that they beat each other up, that they were outsmarted by a beggar, and that this monk possesses terrifying magical powers that can control their minds, he essentially proves that the prime minister isn't the most powerful force in the universe.
Exactly.
And in a totalitarian regime, telling the dictator that someone else possesses superior power is effectively a death sentence for the messenger. So Qinan frames it as a simple, physical act of insubordination. He translates a profound supernatural defeat into a bureaucratic problem his boss can understand.
That is an incredibly astute reading of the political dynamics the text is portraying.
Thanks.
Because the servants are actually more terrified of the prime minister's wrath over their failure than they are of a monk who can control their minds.
Which is wild to think about.
It is. It speaks volumes about the pervasive culture of fear within the administration. The truth is simply too dangerous to report, so the system relies on a foundation of lies fabricated by terrified middle managers.
And the prime minister takes the bait completely. He is enraged by the idea of this single dissenting voice. So he grabs a red ink brush to issue a warrant to the capital garrison.
And that red ink brush is a fantastic historical detail from the source.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it signifies absolute, official, irreversible imperial authority.
Wow. And he dispatches 2 generals, 500 soldiers, and local officials to surround the temple and arrest this one single monk.
The sheer scale of the military response is staggering. He doesn't just send the local police, he deploys a literal battalion.
It is entirely absurd. It's totally asymmetrical warfare against a single unarmed individual. I mean, it would be the equivalent of a modern city mayor sending a fully armed SWAT team, armored personnel carriers, and like 3 attack helicopters to arrest a single guy doing street magic in a public park.
Yeah, it's completely over the top.
500 soldiers for one guy.
But that absurdity is precisely the point the author's making. It brilliantly exposes the inherent paranoia that accompanies unchecked power.
Right.